right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's 8 o'clock where I am in Ames, Iowa, near to Iowa State University. Like I said before, this is a part of the webinar series for the Consortium for Innovation, Post-Harvest Loss, and Food Waste Reduction. Its goal is to preserve nutrients, improve livelihoods, and realize an efficient and effective food system. I am so excited today to have a proper seminar webinar from Dr. Olani Fawoli. Really excited. But before that, I have to go through some housekeeping measures. Again, welcome. And like every webinar, this webinar is being recorded and it will be placed on the Consortium's webpage, which is reducephl.com or .org, and also on our YouTube channel. So if you want to rewatch it, that's where our webinar recordings live. Just a bit about the Consortium. It's made up of 9 member institutions and 2 major funders: the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research and the Rockefeller Foundation. It also must be said that each one of these institutions are bringing their own funding as well. So thank you so much to our funders. And I just want to also give a big shout out to the Ed Schneider Center and Nicholas, who is in the background always setting these webinars up, and he's at the University of Maryland. So thank you very much to Nicholas. Additionally, in addition to our member institutions, we also have a large number of collaborating institutions. You can see them on the screen here now. We're very excited to work with all of these institutions on our consortium projects. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Olani Fawoli, and he's going to be giving a presentation on edible coatings and fruit preservation. Olani, are you ready?
Sure, I'm ready. I just want to share my screen. You cannot start screen sharing. Okay, let me just try to share my screen. There we go. There we go. Thank you. Let me just show my face so that people can see who I have. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. And I'm very excited to share my experience with edible coating on stone fruit, and in particular on plums. I'm going to switch off my camera because of the bandwidth and connectivity. If that is fine by the moderator, then we can proceed. Okay, I'm going to do that right now. So my approach here is to, use this platform to raise awareness on what we are doing in terms of going green in post-harvest preservation of horticultural crops, and also to share with you some of the lessons that we have learned, and also to let you know that this technology is now on the rise in terms of the spotlight and research concentration on it to use it as an alternative to fungicides, synthetic fungicides, and also for plastic packaging. I'm going to share with you 3 research experiments that we have done so far. Some of them are still ongoing, but I'm excited to share what we have learned and what we plan to do. Just trying to move my slide. Okay, awesome. Like I said, edible coating, my focus will be on plums, but I will take you through a little bit of the industry It's amazing. 1% of production actually is coming from South Africa when you think about the global production, and 60% from Southern Hemisphere. This is a good opportunity for us to actually enter the market during the canter season when there's no fruit in the Northern Hemisphere. South Africa is so diverse in terms of agroclimates. So all the 9 provinces can actually grow stone fruit, but in particular, Western Cape is favored in terms of the weather condition, and they are able to grow in higher production. We have about 350,000 tons that are produced actually every year. And when we talk about stone fruit, we're talking about peaches, apricot, and nectarine, as well as plums in particular that constitute this stone fruit. And it's with the industry is worth $2 billion. 2 billion rands. That's also a big, but not as big as your palm fruits, apples and pears, but it's relatively big and it's very, very export oriented. And this last point actually speaks to the importance of contributing to the development of the industry, because the industry itself employs 24,000 laborers. And out of the 24,000 laborers, they have 95,000 dependents. So it's very, very important to make sure that the sustainability of the industry is maintained. If we zoom in on the plums in terms of the production and what kind of plums we actually produce in South Africa, it's called Japanese plum, and it's very, very popular. And in fact, the plums from South Africa are known to be to have unique character in terms of their distinct taste and high nutritional value. We have over 1,000 varieties or cultivars, you might say, but many of these are actually very, very low in terms of production. We have major ones that are highly produced and highly export oriented. And like I said, we have 16% production in the Southern Hemisphere, and our competitor, and this is very important, is Chile. And we also have Brazil and Argentina as some of our competitors. But Chile is actually the main competitor, and they are also on their feet working on this edible coating to actually make the industry more efficient. Like I said, it's export oriented, and like I said, also it's really, really lucrative when it comes to exporting, because they can get dollars for the rand. For the fruit, which is very good. Looking at where we actually export our fruit, you can see why it's highly export oriented. It's mainly to the EU, Russia, and the United Kingdom. And you can see Africa is just 1%. Although it's the closest to us, we're on the African continent, but because of the lucrative markets in the EU and the United Kingdom, because that means we have to ship our crop to a distant market, and which means we need an adequate and environmentally efficient technology in place to actually be able to deliver this crop to the export market. So like I said, there are limitations in the industry. That's why we're working on this. And the distance actually doesn't help, because we have to ship our crop for 2 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, and before it can actually get to the export market that we're selling to. And what that means is one of the challenges that we face is shrivel. It's really a big problem in the industry, because and overripening, as a matter of fact. But this has been linked to cultivars, because we have so many cultivars. Some are very, very shrivel. They're prone to shrivel. Some are moderate, and some are less in terms of the shrivel occurrence. But one thing that is important, interesting now is in the past few years, we now see cultivars that are not prone to shrivel now having shrivel problems. And that means something going on with the climatic condition in terms of why this crop shrivel. And I'm going to touch on that, what we're doing about it. The second one is the pathogen, the post-harvest pathogen problems, the decay. When the fruit arrive at the export market, you see a lot of effort going into repackaging, sorting the fruit and repackaging, and this costs a lot of money because you have to deploy labor to do the sorting, and also you, in addition to the fruit that you actually lost. And the third aspect is the environmental sustainability, and I'm going to touch on this in order not to waste time. I'm going to go into detail one by one before I tell you the approach that we are actually adopting. So what happens is, according to the industry context, we've got about 15 to 46% claims when it comes to shrivel-related losses. So when we harvest, we ship for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we, by the time the fruit reaches the export market on the shelf, you see a lot of shrivel. Even at the point of delivery, you see a lot of shrivel fruits. And this is really a big problem when it comes to return on investment. And again, when it comes to the interest or the market share, the impact on the industry and on the confidence, the export market as in our fruit, it's not looking good. And we have seen this every year, every season, going worse and not looking promising at all. We did a lot of research and trying to know what actually makes fruit shrivel. I mean, plums shrivel. One of the things is of course, the cuticle can be implicated, but when you look down in detail into the cuticle, you see micro cracks, lentil cells are compromised. It's about biomechanics of the fruit cuticle, the elasticity and the formation of the epidermal cells. We also know that there's actually more to know, more to learn about shrivel in plum. We're talking about the impact of seasonality. I just mentioned now that some cultivars that are not prone to shrivel are now developing shrivel, and this is very problematic. So what's happening, what's the effect of seasonality, effect of cultivar sustainability, the climate specific regulation, that regulate the mechanism in terms of shrivel. So these are the things that we are still, we still need to learn more about. One thing that I must also say is the way we actually handle our fruit. If you know that if you are very, very familiar with plums, you know that they have cuticular wax, and these cuticular wax are naturally to protect, to act as natural protective barrier against moisture loss. And this is also dependent on the composition and the concentration of the wax. And one thing that makes it worse is the way we actually handle the fruit. When we harvest, we compromise this waxy layer because we have to harvest and then we have to wash off the wax, and then depending on the handling time or holding time before the fruit actually get packaged and shipped onto the to the export market, you see that a lot of the processes also needs to be looked at. But also, if we look at the regulation or the demand or requirement of the export market, they actually require that we wash, some market require that you actually wash your fruit. So that means you are actually getting rid of the wax layer and then exposing the fruit to even higher moisture loss. So for those that market that you don't need to wash, you have your fruit like this. Also, the existing technology that we use is to package the fruit just as it, and then you use a lot of plastic sheets, plastic bags to actually cover the fruit to prevent moisture loss. For those that you actually have to wash, this is applicable to any stone fruit. You wash and the fruit will be clean, but you need to use a lot of, layers. It's more about adding layers and layers and layers of packaging material, including you, your foam sheets, and then you have your shrivel sheets, all this plastic packaging and extra materials added to it for you to actually control it. But the thing is, we still have this problem of shrivel in plums. And in addition to that, we also have overripening. And this is partly due to mixed maturity fruit, because you want to harvest as soon as possible, and there's limited salting going on. And when the fruits are of different maturity stage, you end up with a mixed maturity and overripening in some. And in addition to that, even the handling, the condition at times actually speed up or doesn't actually delay ripening in stone fruits in general, especially in plums, depending on the cultivar. So the third one that the second one is about a pathogen. The pathogen in South Africa, we know botrytis and Mollenilia, especially in Western Cape, has been identified specifically to be the problem, the pathogen, the main pathogen responsible for postharvest decay in stone fruit. And our colleagues in plant pathology at Stellenbosch University actually discovered this. So we know that this problem is, we know the source of the problem, and we can actually tackle this problem in terms of the technology we are adopting to cater, to actually reduce decay. And the existing post-harvest technology that we use is, again, packaging is part of it, because of course, one of the functions of your plastic liners to prevent from spores and pathogens from getting onto the fruit. But again, it can be a very good, it can create a very good atmosphere for the pathogens to also grow. There are advantages and disadvantages, not being environmentally friendly and expensive. One plastic liner can cost $1.50, and each box must carry it, and it depends. Some actually can be as high as R5, because there's different. Some also use modified atmosphere packaging. The other one that we use, it's chemical in combination with the packaging. And the main one we use in the industry is flucloxone, and we know that it's very, very efficient. However, there's an evidence that the microbes actually develop resistance against this chemical. And again, it's known to be toxic concern when it comes to consumption of chemicals like this, and especially that you have to consume with fruit. So this is a huge concern, especially in the European countries, in terms of what chemicals we use. And in fact, every year now, there's a trend in terms of reducing the minimum residual level, reducing the threshold. And this means that if you have to reduce it, then it becomes less effective. So there's a need to actually look into alternatives. Of course, we all know about this environmental aspect of food preservation. All industry, in fact, are on this. By 2030 or 2050, there'll be, by weight, more plastic in the ocean than fish. So everyone is concerned about this, and especially when it comes to single-use plastic. But it's not only about the marine life, it's actually about us, because we know that plastic, fish, and we do eat fish, and this really not what we want in terms of a degrading environment and our health. So again, there's a whole lot of effort going on. I was in a meeting with the umbrella association of the industry outgroup, and one of the approaches to how to reduce plastic, how to make the plastic recyclable or compostable, or how you can actually replace it. And all these actions are actually on the table. And there's a concerted effort or call to actually come together and see how we can solve this problem. So we're looking at the aspect of food quality, food safety as well, getting rid of or reducing the synthetic chemicals in our food. And we're looking at the environmental sustainability of post-harvest preservation of waters, or that we are, of course, it's one of the approaches. We have so many approaches that we can look into, but the approach we are looking at currently, or that I'm going to discuss with you, is edible coating. And in fact, edible coating is not a new technology. It's been used in the 12th and 13th centuries, by the Chinese, using wax coating, even though it wasn't edible, but wax to actually cover oranges and lemon. So it's but we know science has told us that coating can actually prevent or minimize moisture on the formulation. It can also prevent oxygen from getting into, to the fruit, and as a matter of fact, reducing the oxidation processes because it limits oxygen from reaching the crop, the living crop that we know, and it's interesting, and we are also working on this. It can also help against mechanical damage, especially marks on fruits, where if you apply it pre-harvest, it can prevent sunburn, so it can form shield against UV, pathogens as well, and chemicals. So there's so many things. And one good thing about edible coating is actually not, it's very, very different formulation or different approaches, and you can make it adaptable depending on the problem that you are addressing. And again, another advantage is that the aspect of plastic, alternative to plastic, and fungi, because you can add natural fungicides or antimicrobial agents to get your formulation and your products. And another thing is it's now being used to actually enhance nutrition, and enhance sensory attribute of food, because you can incorporate bioactives and to actually act as carrier for this nutritional compounds. So again, like I said, because there's a big trend, I just checked from Scopus today, and you can see the rise in edible coating, publication in edible coating per year. It peaked in 2020, and it's, the year just started, but I'm sure it's gonna surpass 2020 publication. So you can see the trend, and you can see also their projections in terms of market share. So this is not only about research, it's actually been taken up by the industry, and it's been spread across different regions of the world in terms of how this can actually grow economically and be used as an effective technology. So the first thing we did here was when we wanted to start this project, was to actually look into literature and see what has been done on stone fruit. What are what can we learn, and how can we improve on this existing knowledge? And one thing that we observe is that there's a huge potential ripening process and reducing losses in stone fruits using edible coating. In particular, polysaccharide-based coating actually are more promising and they work well with stone fruit. So that's something very, very significant that we also learned. And the stone fruit responded well in terms of the physiological responses of the fruit to coating, because it's not only about the coating, because material scientists can develop coatings, they can do the formulation and all that, but at the end of the day, it's all based on the interaction between the coating and the fruit that you are, a specific fruit you are trying to apply to. And this can vary based on the cultivar, based on even where the fruit is coming from, and based on the fruit type. So we know that stone fruit actually responded well. And one thing that is also very significant that we learned is that there's so many research that are based on the lab that are actually not, that do not simulate commercial real world effects to apply this technology. So it might work well in the lab. And when you, from experience now that I'm going to share, when you move it to the real life, the real world, under the harsh condition, uncontrolled condition in real world, you see that you might have to go back and optimize so much on, that so much research that are based on lab experiment and very, very few on the semi-commercial trials. So again, there's very a lack of information on the potential of edible coating application when it comes to how can we use it to replace your plastic bags, a viable alternative. So I'm going to share very quickly with you the first experiment that was focused on the effect of edible coatings on shelf life and shrivel development in exported plums. And our approach is simple. We know polysaccharides, we know about polysaccharides and their effects in alleviating or maintaining quality or reducing delaying ripening in stone fruit. So we use selected polysaccharides, and in order to increase the practical application readiness level of the research, we source two coatings actually that are used for other fruits to see how they work on this crop. So we have the control that is unwashed and that is uncoated, and we simulated the export condition of the fruit. From harvest, we subjected the fruit to minus 0.5 degrees, and then we assess the fruit along different shelf life days. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is the evidence that the coating can actually cover the cracks or the lenticels on the surface of the fruit. You can see in figure A that lenticels of uncoated sample with natural wax. You can see when the natural wax is there, you can see some micro cracks, you can see some opening which can allow for moisture loss. And when the fruit, the lenticels of uncoated fruit with natural pack outs, you can see that the opening is actually wider. And on the seed side, you can see that when we actually coat the fruit, when you cover the fruit with edible coating, you have this privilege, or this advantage of covering the pores. And this is very important in terms of reducing moisture loss that can impact on shrivel development. So in terms of weight loss, when we look at different stages, like 5 days and 20 days shelf life, we see that 3 edible coats, actually 4 of them perform better than the control, significantly than the control at this 3 different stages. And this is very promising. And one thing that was surprising is that alginate and chitosan weight loss, they actually increase weight loss in plums. And this very was very surprising, because some articles have actually reported chitosan and alginate as being good, but you can see that it all depends on the coating and formulation, the way you formulated the coating, and also the cultivar you are dealing with. And one thing that could have happened here is the ability of these coatings to actually alter the bow of the fruit to make it less elastic, and then you can actually have more cracks on the fruit surface. Yeah, when we now see the impact of this on shrivel, we can see the same pattern in terms of the same coating that reduce weight loss having effects on shrivel incidence, and those that actually promoted weight loss having higher incidence of shrivel in them. And again, we see a strong correlation between weight loss and shrivel incidence in fruit. When we look at in terms of the color development, of course, ripening will bring about color development. You expect the fruit to change when it's getting ripened, to change from bright red to dull red or very dark color, and then you expect the chroma to decline a little bit. So we can see that we have a range or a varied responses in terms of the delay in ripening in this fruit. So one thing we observe here is that fruits that the control looked at 5-day shelf life look exactly the same as the fruit coated with gum arabic. We're talking about 15-day increase in storage life of the fruit. Of course, when we raise this with industry, one thing they said is that, but we want our fruit to be ready, to be ready to eat when they get to the export market. Of course, you want that, but there are also technologies, there's also ways to have a stepwise, to have a more well-regulated ripening of the fruit. When that will be based on demand, instead of having the fruit reach the export market over-ripening. So this is one of the things that when we share with the industry was very clear in terms of not only that the fruits will reach the market, but we want the fruit to be ready. So we want approaches that can be made to make the fruit ready. Again, we looked at respiration, the fruit response. We didn't get much in terms of, because there's significant interaction between the treatment and the time. But again, we can see trends in terms of the ones that extremely delayed ripening in fruit having less respiration rates. And this is, again, expected. Again, another evidence of ripening is the storage index we look into. The more negative, the softer the fruit. And again, we see that these three coatings actually had a very significant effect on delaying ripening, looking at the firmness, the flesh firmness, the fruit compression, and also the skin toughness. But one must remember that alginate and chitosan actually promoted shrivel. So I wouldn't consider them as a good candidate in terms of shrivel control, or there could be a need to revisit the formulation in a way that it will reduce moisture loss while it's also delaying ripening. But again, you don't want the ripening to be extremely delayed. Of course, we wanted to be sure that edible coatings the edible coating we applied did not cause any effects off-flavor effect, because this is one of the problems we have in the industry when it comes to edible coating. You tend to overcoat the fruit, and it will be forced to anaerobic respiration, and then you develop this off flavor. So we looked at specific compounds, specific volatiles that are implicated in off flavor. And one thing we find here is only ethyl acetate and ethanol that were actually present. And there were no significant difference between control at the different stages of that we investigated. The only place where we observed differences was at 5-day shelf life, where the control G was significantly lower. And this is something that we were concerned about, and that we investigated in a sensory, that actually led us to a sensory analysis of it. So we can say, in terms of decision matrix, the gum arabic is a promising one in terms of polysaccharides that we use. It's very, very promising. And it can be taken further in terms of the commercial application of it. And that's what we did. So knowing this, the gum arabic is a candidate, we went into experiment 2. And I'm going to go through this very quickly to save time, to see, can we formulate bioactive coating or composite using gum arabic to actually control pathogen. And that's what we did. We tried, based on literature, we know that thyme oil are specifically antimicrobial agent, and for this specific pathogens, they actually they were known to be very active. A unique species of this pathogen in South Africa. It was interesting to actually test them on this. We also use salicylic acid because we know that they regulate processes in plants, and they can actually have this elicitor to promote defense mechanism in plants. So we can use this to actually increase the defense system in the plant to fight pathogens. So it was interesting to look at. So the first thing we did was to look at in vitro study to actually apply this directly to see how we can inhibit growth using this pathogen. We can see that for botrytis, you can with thyme oil, you can completely inhibit you can inhibit the growth at 0.25 millimolar, which is quite interesting. For salicylic acid, we didn't expect much because they are not known to be an antimicrobial agent because their mode of action is different. So we didn't experience nothing. We didn't experience something really interesting. However, at higher concentrations, like from 1.5 millimolar, you can actually see some evidence of growth inhibition of these two pathogens that we investigated. So from here, we moved into from in vitro to in vivo study to actually inoculate the fruit with the pathogens and see and test the efficacy when the fruit is actually in the host. When the pathogen is actually in the host, and see how it works. We increase the concentration because we know that the effects can vary. The in vitro effect cannot really directly be, it's not directly proportional to the in vitro study. So we had 3 different concentration by doubling the concentration. And one thing also is because fludarabine is also used in the industry, we wanted to test the combination of fludarabine with this coating to see the efficacy on this. And what we find here is that for all the bioactive and combination composite we tried, we see varied effects, some actually not very disappointing, to say the least. We see flucloxazine, and no wonder it's used in the industry, having significant reduction in decay incidence. But it's promising to see that gum arabic with 4 millimolar time or also shows some promising effect. And even gum arabic itself, the polysaccharide itself, actually had a significant reduction in decay incidence when you compare it with control, which is quite also interesting for us. Again, the same trend for Mononina laxa. I'll skip through this. Tries to ongoing is to optimize the coating formulation with increased thermal concentration. We're also exploring other antimicrobials. One of the ones that we're looking at is using nanoparticles, especially zinc oxide nanoparticles, and also making the formulation nano-size, nanoscale, in order to increase the surface area and the efficacy of the coating, because it's very, very important when it comes to controlling decay in fruit. If I move to the last experiment, this last experiment was actually now based to moving the research from the lab to the field. And this was a huge lesson for us, because this taught us that what we do in the lab is actually not a true representation of what we should expect in the real world. The real world is very, very tough and complicated. So what we do, knowing that the way the operations in the commercial pack houses are different. In fact, you see some having dipping mechanism for their treatment, and some having the atomizer, the spraying method. So in order to balance, cater for this, the concentration, knowing that the very small amount of coating will land on the surface of the fruit if you spray the fruit versus when you actually dip it. So based on preliminary study, we worked on the concentration of gum arabic that will allow for the same effect that we expected in terms of when we dip. So we did this in the commercial pack house, the biggest pack house actually in the Western Cape, Sonia Pack House, and then we took over their system and did it in real life. And one thing that is also interesting here is we told that from harvest, we said, you know what, we don't want to control anything. We want to treat the fruit just like you normally do. Normally they collect the fruit after harvest, they receive the fruit, and the fruit will stay 2 to 3 days before they actually treat the fruit, because of the capacity, especially during peak season. And another thing is that the fruit will be harvested on a very sunny days, summer, because it's summer day during harvest. And so we said, no, we don't want any control. Let's just apply this and see what will happen, because that's where the value lies. That's how the industry can actually adopt this technology. So we simulated the same, and in fact, we also sent some consignment to the export industry to actually see how they will behave. So when we treated the fruit and all that, we took the fruit, we simulated, and we took the fruit to the lab to continue the simulation and see the effect. For safety purpose, we looked at microbial safety of the coatings we are using in terms of whether they are safe for consumption, and because also in the interest of the descriptive sensory analysis that we are going to do. So we tested for this to be sure that they were safe. So to just recap in terms of a very brief what we observed. When we look at it in terms of extending shelf life, delayed ripening, we have evidence. That wasn't a problem. That gum arabic, especially at 10% in the pack house real world scenario, can actually delay ripening, can delay softening, fruit softening. And one thing about it is, if we are not having a problem with shrivel, then this will have been a very good application and very simple to actually adopt. But when we look at weight loss, we didn't find much, although when you look at the data, you can see that the effect is based on the combined effect influence of treatment and time. So it all depends on the time at which you are looking at. As you can see, we still have some, the control having higher moisture loss, but again, it's not only about the coating anymore here, it's also about the time that you subjected the fruit to. So this is very interesting for us. And in terms of shrivel, of course, we didn't expect anything, even though statistically, there was no significant difference. There were no significant differences because that's statistic. But in real life, if you show this to the farmers, to them, it's still promising. But again, this tells us that there's a need to actually consider when designing a project like this and you want adoption to actually consider the real world impact factor on what we're trying to do. And again, because we can establish the relationship between the shrivel effect and the weight loss in terms of moisture loss, we know that there's a need to have a control point, because if the capacity of the pack house will not allow for coating on the day of harvest, then we must look into what must be done to actually help that will be incorporated into the system or into that process so that we can reduce our post-harvest losses. And it's to you that the microbial safety of edible coating they were safe for consumption in terms of the data we collected. So that wasn't a problem. And we subjected this to sensory because again, the coating has some effect on the extension of shelf life, but we still have the problem of shrivel. But it was interesting to see that the coating, even though at higher concentration, because we use a spray method, there were no off flavor or fermented signature in terms of the sensory analysis. And again, when you look at this on the piece, when we put both instrumental and sensory attribute together, we can see distinct separation in terms of the attribute that are regarded as unripe and semi-ripe profile being attributed to gum arabic, and the other ones for the commercial coating we use and the control being attributed to ripe to overripe profile. So we know this. One thing that I'm going into the end of this presentation, one thing that is interesting here is the big question that the industry wanted to know is, could edible coating be a grain replacement technology for plastic packaging bags that we actually use? Of course, there's still promising, but we have to take a step back and based on the data that we actually collected at end of coat study, you can see that control fruit that you didn't coat, you didn't package, had higher shrivel incident, but coated fruits, no shrivel sheet still had some higher level of incidence, and your coated with shrivel sheets had a significant reduction when you control the experiment and when it is coated with the right formulation with plastic packaging. So one thing we know now here is in terms of conclusion, I'm going to get into one particular thing here. In experiment one, we know gum arabic, I've mentioned that we experience 15-day increase in shelf life. We know in experiment two, gum arabic with if it's well formulated with antifungal agents, you can actually have some promising activity on that. And the matrix, also we experienced that the matrix of the gum arabic and this bioactive is also important to look into because we experience reduced efficacy for some of this bioactive. In experiment 3, we know that commercial viability of gum arabic is very promising, especially with gum arabic at 10%, which is also, we know, delayed ripening, microbially safe. But when it comes to shrivel reduction, it wasn't significant under a reward scenario. So one of the lessons that we learned here is that it's important to look into optimization of the coating and the commercial viability. And if you really want the industry to adopt this technology, it's important to consider the infrastructure available in these pack houses. One thing that we know about the control spots in this in the processes is that the time between harvest and when the fruit is packed is actually very crucial, because the fruit itself may have lost moisture required or enough to cause shrivel. No matter what you do, you actually cannot control reverse the process. So now we're now taking a step back, looking into, edible coating application, pre-harvest and post-harvest, and we have an ongoing work on that to actually coat the fruit. There are two ways to go about it: to coat early to actually improve or reinforce the biomechanics, the structure of the cuticle of the fruit, because you can reinforce the structure while the fruit is growing, or to actually coat just before harvest, whereby you actually have sufficient prevention of moisture that may have occurred before you actually package the fruit, before you actually apply post-harvest treatment. The third one is about scalability. The question is, so after you get all these solutions, what do you want to do with it? The scalability is always a problem. How can you scale up? And this requires a partnership with the industry that actually dealing with coatings across the world. And with the industry growing so fast, I'm very, very sure that there will be a lot of partnership in terms of how can we upscale this technology. And we're also looking at the application of nanotechnology, like I said, looking at how we can scale this to a nano size, make it more efficient, and adding novel active phytohormones and all other novel active to actually improve the efficacy and reduce post-harvest losses in the stone fruit industry. I would like to acknowledge these people, these institutions are very instrumental in this research. And in particular, I would like to acknowledge these two amazing ladies that actually carried out the experiment. The MSc ladies, Shannon River and Ms. Jenica Nicole. And also, I would like to acknowledge our industry partner that really, really worked, Pierre Rosso. Mr. Pierre Rosso, very, very instrumental in this work. And that's me right in the middle. I thank you.
That was an excellent presentation. And so we have quite a number of questions coming in. So we'll get right to the questions. And usually we like to keep these to an hour, but if it's okay, Olani, we have a number of questions. So we can go a little bit longer than an hour. That would be great. So I'm just going to get right to it, and hopefully we can get to all of your questions. I'm going to ask a few questions together, Lonnie, so you can respond to those. We have a question about how costly edible coating is currently, also about the intellectual property landscape. So if you could those are kind of two questions that may be outside of the science realm, but something that you might be able to answer right off the bat.
Yes, so in terms of the cost, we also did some work on return on investment. I think there are two things that we have to consider. The first thing is the cost, the gain you get when you reduce losses. When you actually reduce your losses, the gain you get, and also the ability to, that actually can outweigh the benefit. It can make it more profitable. And the other one is if you can remove plastic or reduce plastic packaging, plastic bags, the cost will go down. and then that actually balances up with the cost, the input cost with edible coating that you're actually applying. So that's especially if it's produced locally, upscaled up locally, if you don't have to ship it from the other side of the world, and also if it's in the form, ready to ship form. In terms of IP, this is a very interesting one because you see there's a list of materials that you can use as edible coating. There's a EU list that you, so anyone can go there and pick any polymer or any base coating, but it's all based on the technology that you apply to it and how you actually formulated it. So the IP aspect is very fluid now, but again, it might be very difficult to actually claim IP because the base coatings available is only about how you formulated it, and again, how you actually applied it in the industry.
Okay, thank you. We had a question from Audrey in the chat, and it's reflected upon the fact that you talked a lot about shrinkage in plums. Is that generalizable to other stone fruits? I think her question is, or other fruits in general that you might coat with edible coating.
Yes. In fact, we have a project on pomegranate as well. That one is also at the advanced stage. It's the same principle. But when it comes to stone fruit, we also have the same problem with nectarine. In fact, with nectarine is a bit tricky because one of the coatings that we applied actually changed the color of the nectarine on application. So again, the coating and the type of fruit you're dealing with is very, very important. We have the same problem with other stone fruit. Peaches, the one that has hair is even more. If you're exporting to the export markets, that requires you to remove the hair, the tiny hair. You expose the fruit to more moisture loss. And what that means is that the fruit will get shriveled by the time it arrives to the export. So you need a system, a technology in place to actually cover the pores. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that answer. I have another question from Deirdre, and she's asking about kind of industry standard is that are stone fruit washed before export? You may be able to see that question if you answer that quickly. So.
Yes, again, it all depends on the export, the requirements. But usually you want to wash it. And most of the time you wash it, you make it clean, you make it a bit shiny because you have a lot of, the wax can also harbor a lot of pathogens, that can promote decay. So you want to wash it. And in fact, some pack houses have a system where they scrub the fruit against a surface so that the wax can be collected and can be easily removed. So yes, you have to wash it most of the time.
Okay. Another kind of maybe technical question on the experiment itself. I was asking about the viscosity of the GA formulations in your experiment. If you could speak to that.
Yes, that was one thing that we did initially in terms of looking at the viscosity in our preliminary trial, because you don't want to have a fruit having this thick coating, being sticky and being heavily coated. You want it to be as natural as possible. So we did, our formulation was actually in the interest of the appearance and also having the coating less viscous but efficient. And that's why when you scale down on the proportion of it, you have to complement it with some lipids. You have to complement it with emulsifier. You have to complement to make sure that it's actually more applicable.
I have another technical question from Maria. Um, it talks about basically the coating and how it affects the fruit when it goes from cold storage, shelf life, and the when condensation occurs. How does the coating respond to kind of, I think, change in temperatures is what she's asking. And how did you evaluate
Yes.
the stickiness of the coating on the fruit? That was
So in terms of the stickiness, yeah. So in terms of the stickiness, those are also evaluated through the the overall appearance, the sensory, descriptive sensory panel. Evaluation that we did to actually look into the stickiness. And as a matter of fact, if you coat your fruit, you don't want to increase the concentration. It's going to develop off layer. We've done it. We've done it before, that you end up with alcohol, like fermented fruit, if it's heavily coated. So you really want to make it as less concentrated as possible. But the concentration also is in the interest. It's informed by how you apply it. If you dip it, then you must make it less concentrated. If you spray it, then it can be a little bit higher, because the amount that's the surface coverage, the amount actually on the surface of the coating is, still on the surface of coating will be less. We try to do this with the SCM. We actually have some data, which I'm not presenting here, to see after you wash it, how do you can measure the waxy layer under this scanning electron microscope to actually measure. I think Nicole did that. I don't have the data here, but you can also use that. We can actually determine that to see the thickness of the coating right on the surface of the fruit.
Okay, I think I have a couple questions here, and I think that in your three experiments, you kind of worked up to this, but we have Murio asking, how can we expand the use of edible coatings to the industrial scale? So I think you in your third experiment, you kind of speak to that, but I don't, wanted to speak more to that, and then on that point, we have a question about whether edible coatings may be right for vegetables like cucumbers and tomatoes.
Okay, so the first question was, how can we scale it up, right? How
Right.
can we make it applicable? Yes. That I think the best approach is to work with the industry itself and to be conversant with the way they operate. That's the only way. You don't assume that lab-based experiments will translate into real-world evidence. It's not going to work. It's never going to, because the real world is not perfect. There's a lot of complications. So it's important when you're designing your experiment, you actually incorporate this into the experiment. You actually scale up your experiment to a semi-commercial proportion, and then you can start having some insight. And that's what lesson we actually learned. And we work very closely, not only with the farmers, but also with the biggest pack house, where they actually gave us their pack line to try this out. And that's the only way you can scale it up. And the interest also because you need the stakeholders, which are the primary producers and the farmers and the pack house. Also, you need to gain the trust. They need to actually know that what you're doing is on the path. Of course, this is a mega trend. This is what the trend is going towards. And there's so much belief in what we are doing. And I think that's the only way to go about it. And now we're taking a step back, going to pre-harvest plus post-harvest application. The pre-harvest we are doing, we're actually making use of a tractor, a heavy tractor, industrial scale sprayer to see how this will impact. Of course, we have to start thinking also the impact on the tree itself. What's going to be the impact? We don't know. but I'll be willing to share that experiment in the near future. And the second one, in terms of the vegetables and all that, of course, but you cannot cut and paste. You have to develop the right formulation and do a lot of try and error for the specific vegetables. We have a lot. I have a student now working on cucumber, looking into, because they also wrapped cucumber in that film, to also control shrivel, looking at how can we replace the plastic, if we call the vegetable, and tomatoes also, of course. So that's about it.
Great. We did have a question for Neil about pre-harvest. I think you answered some of that. Did you want to talk any more about pre-harvest, or was that about your steps to do pre-harvest?
So what was the question?
The question was just, what are you thinking about? What are the techniques? What are you thinking about?
Yes.
Your
if you want to go controlled, you can have your mini sprayer and do targeted coating. You look at surface application, look at the fruit and actually apply on the fruit. But if you want to go industrial, you can actually spray directly. You spray the whole tree, spray and see, just like they spray chemicals and all that, and then see the effects. But we will definitely have to first go small scale, and before we go large scale, which we have done.
Okay, we'll have just a few more questions here, but I have a question about pomegranate seed, and I'm just going to read it to you. Okay, so sorry. Since pomegranate seed is not an additive, how can you manage potential labeling issues for a coming commercialization of edible coatings based upon the active ingredient? Do you see that one in the chat?
In fact, I'm checking, but yeah, again, this the application of the addition of pomegranate seed oil is out of the interest of its bioactivity. But we later on, that was actually a good question. We later on, because it's a very, very niche product and very expensive. So if we have to replace, because you can use the lipid that we had, it's vegetable oil. We try to replace it with pomegranate, which is very, very expensive. It's true that it's again, the cost actually will be highly unrealistic when it comes to using pomegranate seed oil. However, we didn't see any significant difference when we use other vegetable oil.
Okay. I just think that we'll be finishing up the question and answer session now. We have one question in the question and answer session, and then I'll close the webinar. But talking about kind of allergens in gum arabic, and have you seen any allergies from coating? Is that in your purview to?
Yes, one of the questions, I get this question, especially with chitosan, and that's people are allergic to chitosan, and we know that actually now can be obtained from mushroom, so not only from crustacean. So in terms of allergy, we are aware of the allergies, and we know that there are alternatives, actually products that can be used to prevent that. And also the concentration at which allergy can occur is also one thing one can can look into. But I'm not sure of allergy with gum arabic, but I'm pretty sure it's something that one can look into.
Okay. And last question here, and I apologize if we didn't get to all your questions, or if I missed them in the chat. This is a very lively chat, and I thank you so much. But is gum arabic? Have you used this outside of extending the life of other fruits? So I think you answered that, but
yes,
you can say it again.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, you can use it. Yeah.
Great. And I really appreciate, thank you, Dr. Fawoli, for this presentation, the question and answer session afterwards. Thank you, participants. Again, this is from the Consortium for Innovation, Post-Harvest Loss and Food Waste Reduction. Our website, reducephl.com, will have the full presentation, the full webinar up just as soon as we do the technical things to get that up to you. Should be later on today. It's also on our YouTube channel. Will also be on our YouTube channel with all our other questions. So with all our other webinars. I really appreciate this. This was by far the best attended event we've had. So congratulations, Ilani.
Thank you.
And just as an FYI, we're going to have another one of these tentatively scheduled with Jane Mbuko from the University of Nairobi on March 3rd. So you will be hearing from me. I'm the one who sent you the emails. So you'll be hearing from me for all the details. But thank you so much. And we will see all of you later. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm calling for collaboration. If you're interested, feel free to contact me and we can make things happen. Thank you very much.
Great. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.